Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Greetings from the polar vortex.
Yes, it's cold. It's cold.
Right. This is like trapped inside, like we are on the space shuttle or something like that, or in the International Space Station is how I feel today. This is Mike, and I am here with number one, drummer in my band, paranormal enthusiast, and ghost hostess.
That's me, Wendy Lynn Stotts, checking in from Chicago, actually, the heart of the polar vortex.
And also joined by my lovely, not crazy at all sister.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks. Yes. I don't know, Wendy. I think maybe we got a little colder than Chicago today in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I am reporting from. I don't even have internet. I have internet through Sprint, but Spectrum has been down all day. So
the internet's down.
Yeah.
In essence, the world is ending.
Yeah. It really seems like it. My mother-in-law, she has phone and internet through Spectrum. And we were calling and they were like, they're not answering the phone. Why not?
Oh, no.
And then the miracle of miracles, she actually had her cell phone turned on in case someone might be calling her. And we reached her that way.
And she's over 80 years old, right?
Yes. So
so an 80-year-old that keeps a cell phone on, that's like, thank God.
That's like a unicorn right there. That's what it is. So
I'm trying to save my minutes.
So really, all day, no Netflix is what I'm saying. So I have my
gosh,
phone.
how did you survive?
I don't know. It's like going back to the caveman days here. So I watch a big monolith. I just knelt before it and hung out with the monolith all day. So that's what I did.
That sounds good. I was figuring you might make a doll like Laura Ingalls Wilder or something like that in the prairie.
Yeah.
But also coming from the other side of the polar vortex, the other side of Lake Michigan, we got with us a paranormal enthusiast, John Keel expert, and a fellow weirdo that we met at the Michigan Paracon, and that is Mr.
Steve Ward, coming to you from just east of Battle Creek, Cereal City. Remember the old cartoons, The Best to You Each Morning? Anybody that grew up on cartoons was inundated with Kellogg's cornflakes and all that good stuff. In fact, when it's not so cold, if the windows open just a little bit, you can barely hear the snap, crackle, pop coming from Battle Creek.
I thought you were going to say you could smell the Fruit Loops.
Oh, I'll use that one next time. I tend to use the same taglines too much. So,
yeah, I think I smell the Fruit Loops right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're a little bit late this week because of the polar vortex and the whole some travel issues and everything. But we are back with the latest and greatest and in weird news and things like that today. And I gotta say, because all the news has been on the weather, you had to dig a little bit deeper this week when you wanted to get weird.
Well,
I feel,
Mike, I think the weather itself is weird. If you go back, just a few years, you find some strange connections. So we can
hit us with it.
We can explore that.
All right, let's go.
So the polar vortex, okay? Is it connected to global warming or not? Well,
all right.
I go to the Guardian, firstly, and they talk about how Donald Trump, of course, is using the polar vortex to mock climate change, to say that, hey, it's not happening at all. And saying, hey, temperatures are falling. He tweeted, in coming days, it's expected to get even colder. People can't even last outside, even for minutes. What the hell is going on with global whamming? Oh, Oh, he meant to say global warming.
Oh God, he spelled it
He
wrong.
did. He did. What the hell is going on with global whamming? I wish we could ask George Michael, but he's no longer with us. So what the hell is? And I don't remember the other guy's name, so we're lost. What the hell is going on with global warming? And then he said, "Please come back fast. We need you." And then some scientist actually said, "Well, we're glad you asked about that because there actually might be a connection between these extreme temperatures, hot and cold, and global warming. And the climate change's role could actually be pushing the Arctic air further south than it would normally go." And they also reminded him that, hey, we do have global warming, but if you lived through the last few years, you might have noticed, even though the planet is warming up, we still have winter. So that's not going to go away. But he hadn't noticed, with all the global warming going on. So in the U.S., we had record breaking highs this year. In fact, I think 2018 is the warmest year on record. But we're also experiencing a record lows as well. And we're going to just explore why that might be.
What is that, like what the guy who always goes on Coast to Coast, and his book is like, it's about climate change, but it's that we're going to freeze to death instead of global warming. It's like not by fire, but by ice.
Oh, yeah.
You guys heard him on Coast to Coast?
Yeah. So I'm not sure about that guy. I know who you're talking about, but we will talk about another Coast to Coast alum, Whitley Strieber, in just a moment. But
Okay.
the cold snap, actually, I was watching the Today Show today, and 85% of the contiguous United States were below zero today. So
Wait, how can that be? Because there's so much. Okay, the contiguous United States, like that's the continental United,
Yes,
the parts that we're all touching each other. Right. Okay.
Is it by area or is it by like quantity of states?
that is a good question. But it was predicted.
We're gonna have to ask Al Roker.
Yeah, we got to ask Al. What did you mean by that, Al? Because that was very, very frightening. So anyway, what might be happening with the cold snap is that the jet stream, which is this air current that is flowing, between us and the Arctic North, is actually becoming unstable. So the jet stream, usually keeps the polar vortex, which is this air mass which swirls around the North Pole, at bay, and then it keeps, the more temperate readings where we are, where they are. And so what has seemed to happen with the loss of a lot of the polar ice is, whereas before, during the hot summers, the sun's heat wouldn't penetrate into the water, it would be blocked or reflected by the ice. Now that so much of that ice is gone, it's actually penetrating into the water, causing the water temperatures to be higher than they normally would. And then in winter, they start releasing that extra temperature. And then that creates winds, which blow the jet stream around and actually blow the polar airs north further than they normally would go.
South, you mean further?
Oh yeah, yes, south.
Okay,
so,
just make it. All right.
It blows these winds caused by this warming. Actually, blow the they create a problem in the system where it's not stable anymore. They destabilize the system and then are pushing the air, the polar vortex, which normally just hangs around the North Pole, lower, more southerly than it would go in normal years. And they're talking about this weakening in the jet stream as being one of the cause causes for why we're seeing these polar vortexes more and more. The last time we experienced this dip was in 2014. But, scientists are
what I
taking
like
this
about that
seriously.
is you're the first person who actually tried to explain it. Usually when you have some usually when like your racist uncle or several says, I'd like some global warming,
Right.
Whatever, or says it like that. Then all of a sudden, everybody just kind of snickers and says, well, it's science and this is what I heard and you're just an old jerk. So it's good to kind of come out and say like, actually, there is a reason why these things are happening,
Right.
and going into it, and not just taking either side of a culture war here and say, well, you stand over here, Donald Trump stands over here, and I won't take either side or things like that. You say like, actually, let's look at what's happening to our weather and maybe pay attention to it, because it doesn't matter on which side of the political divide, we all have to share the planet. And so let's make sure that it's nice.
Right. We all have to look at reality too and see and try to figure out like what might be happening. So The Guardian, which is a reputable source, quotes Jennifer Francis, who's the senior scientist at the Woods Hole Research Center, which is a climate change research center, a weather research center. And she points out a little bit more about what's happening. She's saying that the evidence is there and they're putting it together right now, but it is a complex system. She says we aren't entirely there yet, but there's more and more to support for this concept. And so what she's saying in essence is that there's some evidence that, as I said, the jet stream, which is this meandering air current that flows over North America and Europe, is slowing and becoming wavier as the planet warms. And the jet stream interacts with the polar vortex, helping bring numbing temperatures further south. And then some other scientists also point out that there's a complex sequence of events that involves the sea ice, which is rapidly diminishing in the Arctic. And as the ice retreats, summertime heat that is absorbed by the dark ocean is later released into the atmosphere during winter, spurring winds that can disrupt the polar vortex. So instead of keeping it where it usually is, it's pushing it down.
Now, how does this all lead to the day after tomorrow?
The day after tomorrow.
That's all we want to know.
Is not science, but it is influenced.
You don't say.
Right. It's a movie for entertainment purposes, but if you go to...
It didn't even succeed on that level.
Okay, well, I enjoyed it anyway. So Whitley Strieber,
all right.
who you guys might know from the book and then later the movie Communion, is and he's written scads of other novels, and the movie Wolfen, which was really great, werewolf movie back in the day.
Wolfen's a great one.
Yeah. So
Albert Finney fights werewolves.
Right.
Sweet.
I loved it. So anyway, he is an incredibly talented writer, and he's also, of course, way into the paranormal because, he says that he's been abducted by aliens, and that was the subject of Communion and later sequels. Now, he also thinks that the Ice Age might be triggered by global warming. And he has an article on his site, unknowncountry.com, called Ultra Cold Air Causing Record Freeze in Much of U.S. and UK. And he said the reason that this is happening is twofold. First, the Gulf Stream is no longer strong enough to drive warm air up to the U.S. East Coast. So now we're talking about another air current, the Gulf Stream, near the Gulf of Mexico. So that's no longer strong enough to drive warm air up to the U.S.
Mexico.
East Coast to contain...
That sounds nice.
Yeah, it does. To contain polar air in the Arctic. And second, the sun is moving into a minimum during which less solar energy is reaching the Earth. I don't know about that.
That means less sunspots.
Yeah,
and
fewer
Wendy, that's not
sunspots.
good. That does not bode well for us.
Maybe we'll just have to make up for it.
Hell yeah.
Now, so let's go back to the 2004 movie The Day After Tomorrow, which was based on Whitley Strieber's book called Superstorm from 1999. And he claimed that actually his impetus to write that with Art Bell, who we just lost last year, was that he met with some kind of maybe extraterrestrial, interdimensional teacher in this book he calls The Key, who told him that this would happen. So it was like a prediction that the sea levels would warm to such an effect that they caused this changing of the air currents, which would lead to extreme weather and then spur a new ice age. So that's what that movie is about. And it, of course,
Well, there's no aliens in that movie,
no, but
though.
it's directed by Roland Emmerich, who directed Independence Day. So
Stargate.
yeah, so it's a very
Yeah. Unless you're going to say that Jake Gyllenhaal is extraterrestrially good looking.
he is, and so is Dennis Quaid, and so anyway, they had the director Roland Emmerich, who directed Independence Day. So you have these huge scenes of like a tsunami hitting New York and L.A. destroyed by huge twisters, like a gang of them destroy L.A. And then the whole of the United States freezes over, and Dennis Quaid is first in a race to get the president. He's like, hey, dude, we have to evacuate the southern states into Mexico, or the whole United States is going to be done. The whole contiguous United States done for. And then he's like, well, what about the northern states? And Dennis Quaid says, they're done. They're already icicles. It's too late for them. So now we see our eminent future there. But we have a cousin in Florida, and we have another cousin in Hawaii. So I'm thinking we just need to get those plane tickets going. But isn't it interesting that at the end of the movie, there is no wall. Here we get political here. Uh-oh. There is no wall separating in the United States and Mexico, because what the president does is he forgives all of Mexico's debt, and then Mexico accepts all the refugees from the southern states of America, and there's no wall to separate us, so we get right in there and survive the next ice age.
And then the cartels all kill us.
Well, maybe. But this also reminded me of a classic Twilight episode. I don't know if you guys remember, because it's from
Twilight or Twilight Zone? Very
Zone.
different things.
Yes. I got to be clear on that. So, not Twilight. No, I didn't say that. Cut that one.
So
cut
the
it
sparkly
out.
vampires.
All right. So, a classic Twilight Zone episode from 1961 called The Midnight Sun. So, it centers on this woman and her landlady, and they're in her sweltering New York apartment, and everybody has evacuated except for them, trying to actually move north where it's cooler because of extremely high temperatures. And it's midnight when the episode begins, and it's 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And the temperature slowly rises, and this woman, Norma, she's a painter, and she watches her beautiful, cool jungle scenes and waterfall scenes. Like, actually, the paint starts to melt as the temperature goes up to 120 and 130, and her elderly landlord just dies right in front of her of heat stroke. And thankfully, she wakes up. And the elderly landlord is attending her in bed. And then the doctor comes in and says, oh, thank God, it was just a fever dream. And then they look outside and they see this unbelievably heavy falling snow. So unlike in the dream, when Earth was hurling towards the sun, getting closer and closer, on a march to its eventual destruction, instead, now it's spinning off its axis away from the sun, and we're all about to freeze to death.
All right.
So that's
not by fire, but by ice.
Yeah. That's one classic episode where it was a surprise ending, and it was it was all a dream. But
right, and then we all die.
The
anyway.
twist was you're still dead. So that's one of my favorite. I just remember seeing that and just being overcome with fear.
Well, I remember when the coming global superstorm came
Yeah.
out. Like that was it was 20 years ago this year. The coming global superstorm came out, and
Yep.
we were all in millennial fever, weren't we? Like this Y2K, the end of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Like we were ready to go.
Yeah, that was 1999 when the book came out.
There was an NBC miniseries called The Big One about California falling into the ocean.
Yeah.
There was a Y2K miniseries, and there was the first episode of Family Guy is all about how Y2K is causes the end of the world.
And
Right.
every commercial on the Art Bell show was for the Wave Radio.
Right. Or get your canned food.
Right, exactly.
Right. Yeah. pack
What do you do
go
if you
bags,
can't find
people.
food? You're gonna die.
So I just want to close my story here with, I think, Rod Serling always had this just such poignant narration. His closing narration reads, "The poles of fear, the extremes of how the earth might conceivably be doomed. Minor exercise in the care and feeding of a nightmare. Respectfully submitted by all the thermometer watchers in the Twilight Zone."
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good. You gotta love Rod, and the endings of those stories were always the best. So we could have avoided this entire polar vortex if we would have just listened to Whitley Strieber and his alien friend 20 years ago.
Yep.
I mean, I didn't know that Day After Tomorrow originally had a extraterrestrial inspiration. And here's a little tidbit before we stop talking about the cold. And I'm going to say we're the first people in Wisconsin to stop talking about the cold this week. A little tidbit. The original Team America, the World Police by the South Park creators, that was a marionette movie that was like making fun of the idea that America's the world's policemen. And the original idea when they were going to make a marionette movie of the Day After Tomorrow, but they were going to take it script for script, shot for shot, and remake it with marionettes. And that was their original idea. And then getting like the actual rights to it was too expensive. So they decided to make a musical, and it was brilliant and all that kind of stuff. But it was just funny. They were watching Day After Tomorrow, and they're like, it's so serious, so epic, so all these things. And they're just sitting there like, we should do this with marionettes.
Yeah, they were inspired. But you know what? I gotta say, Whitley Strieber, sometimes really madly brilliant. And, I really love the guy. I have this, I don't know, thing about him. But, he does go on, and, sometimes, well, a lot of times, what he says seems very extreme and unbelievable to me. But then sometimes he has these flashes of brilliance. And yeah, the Day After Tomorrow, it's not science, but it is about something that we're seriously talking about right now, which is changes in ocean temperature, which are causing these bizarre temperature extremes. So right now, as we are experiencing the polar vortex, it's like 114 in Australia. It's a record high.
So stop using that hairspray, everybody. That means, Steve, I want you to throw out your bottles of Aquanet.
What about, can I still use Dippity Doo?
Dippity Doo is environmentally friendly. I think Whitley Strieber actually has coupons for it at the end of the coming global superstorm. Speaking of Dippity Doo, Steve, now you said you found an interesting new paranormal connection this week, and we would love to hear about it.
Okay, well, as some of you know, and especially Allison knows, that my passion is finding connections, past and present, like out of folklore with modern day UFO experiences, and different types of what we think of different types of paranormal phenomena with cryptids, UFOs, and so forth, poltergeist phenomena, where we find these really strange, I think, connections and patterns. At least I can't be dogmatic about it, but it's just very fascinating the way that so many researchers, John Keel, Jacques Vallée, F.W. Holliday, who was a Loch Ness researcher, they start out thinking this is physical, it's flesh and blood, it's nuts and bolts, and then all of a sudden you can almost see them to the point where they throw their hands up in the air, and it's like something doesn't work. Ron Moorhead believes that Bigfoot is a flesh and blood creature. He captures those great Sierra sounds that have been examined of calls of Bigfoot in the Sierra Nevadas, and then eventually he comes to believe that Bigfoot, and he writes it in his new book, Quantum Bigfoot, that Bigfoot is interdimensional. So it seems like most people kind of follow this path to one degree or another. Uh, they're just what I've talked about before is the people that have experiences. Now, let's go back briefly to Anne Jeffreys, a lady in the 1600s. She claimed to have these detailed encounters with the little people, the fairies, right? And
My favorite.
Yes.
okay, well, good, because we know that there are uh, many parallels between folklore, the fairies, the gnomes, the trolls, and so forth, with some modern day UFO experiences. And later on, we can talk about, if you want, the great Joe Symington case of the cosmic pancakes. But I'm not going to talk about that right this second. It's
Weren't we just talking about space pancakes last week, Mike?
we were talking about space pancakes last week, so that might make a return appearance in a little bit.
there are many connections with that. But anyway, Anne Jeffreys would have these detailed encounters. But the thing is, she didn't leave her room. She would go into a trance, and she would have these experiences that weren't dreamlike. They were events like with a beginning, middle, and an end. Okay, let's come a little bit more forward to the 1950s. Orfeo Angelucci, one of the famous contactees, maybe second or third to George Adamski. The George Adamski met Orthron, the Venusian, in the desert in 1952. Of course he did. Then we had Howard Menger that met his own aliens. Well, Orfeo Angelucci had all these detailed experiences with the beautiful Space Brothers, but he would fall into trances on the couch. And he wouldn't go anywhere, but he would have these very, very real experiences to his own mind. All right. Well, there's another case that I came upon very recently, and this one, we can get as much into it as you want, but it's very detailed. In 1976, it started. This is Northeast Wales, Clwyd, Wales, and it happened to the Sunderland family. And by the way, just for reference, it's in a really obscure book called Alien Contact: Close Encounters of the Extraterrestrial Kind. And I just dropped something on the floor. Oh, that's great.
That's all right, Steve. As long as it wasn't your brains, we're fine.
Oh, that's they'll never fall out. But one of the researchers is Jenny Randalls, great British researcher, who is another one that I follow a lot. But this was a really hot summer. It started in July. A lot of this centers around Gaynor Sutherland. She was about 9 years old at the time. They're in kind of a rural area. She's taking her bicycle out on this little 2-lane in the middle of nowhere, and she sees this craft, this silver cigar craft, that at first she thinks must be some kind of a carnival float. It lands. She sees this strange man walks out from behind it. He's about 5.5 feet tall, very stiff movements. She knows something's very wrong. He has kind of a long face, a pointed chin, and very pale. And large eyes. Something isn't right. And then a little bit later, this woman comes out, and later on, one of her brothers has an experience, and even later on, as you follow this, what they found out, after a couple of years, they've Jenny Randalls and her crew have been talking to these people, and they find out they've been seeing strange lights all the time. They've been seeing shadow people. It's one of these classic cases where they didn't even think about some of the things that happened in the past because they didn't have any frame of reference. But one of the younger brother describes a case, and he was put under regressive hypnosis, and they look like the Kelly Hopkinsville goblins. When he drew his picture, when Jenny Randall saw it, she made the reference and thought, holy cow, but these other ones didn't. Okay, but my point is this. Later on, Gaynor, she goes to sleep one night, and she has what seems to be a dream, dark tunnel, a bright light, and then she ends up and she sees these two aliens again. Only before she seemed to see them in real time out in the field, right? But now they're there in this whatever it is. The colors are very bright, and they tell her their name is Arna and Pars. All right, and they give the same kind of messages that people get. You're special. We're going to implant something in your brain for later on, and so forth. But the thing is that when this is going on, her mother had gone upstairs to check on her, and she, of course, hadn't gone anywhere. She's lying in bed, very stiff, like she's in a trance, with her arms stiff by her side. So she is having one of these experiences where it isn't really dreamlike, because it has, again, a beginning, middle, and an end, and a clear message, and so forth. So what I was thinking is, how in some of the abduction cases we have uh, people that think they feel like they're floated through walls and so forth.
Yeah.
They go up to the craft.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Well, if this is happening in a mental state, whatever, even though it's an external cause, this could easily explain that. But the problem with this, I thought that's great. Here's a pattern we can find. There are other cases where people they have the missing time, they come back, and then they find out that their feet are all wet from the dew in the grass, or their clothes are dirty, or their shirts put on backwards, or the wrong way, or buttoned wrong. So we get this strange paradox all the time where you think you figured out something, but then it explains some of it, but it doesn't explain all of it. We still have this strong physical element, and then you have the more, I don't know, paranormal, ethereal, elusive element.
Well, what's interesting about that, Steve, I think about the first time that I read Intruders. When you talk about that, and like Intruders, the whole idea is that like the aliens, they just come through the wall,
right?
And so when they're talking about it, it's like that scared the crap, and because it felt like there is nothing we can do. There is no defense against these creatures.
No place is safe.
Right. We are powerless against them. We are but ants to you, oh great extraterrestrial overlords. But I think I love that idea that you're connecting something from the 16th century and bringing it into a 1970s case. And one question: so when she said that there was they were going to implant something in her, this is in the 1970s. Were alien implants already a thing by that point?
This was more of I think the impression I got was they were telling her that she was going to be implanted with an idea or concepts or some knowledge. It wasn't necessarily a physical implant. But again, going back to John Keel, one of his catchphrases was that great phonograph in the sky. People are getting these messages, and people think that when they encounter an alien or they channel this spiritual being or whatever, they think it's something new. And nope, this hasn't happened before. But if you go back in the literature, people are getting the same messages generation after generation, back hundreds of years. You can go back and find people that channeled that had they believe visits to Mars. There's quite a few old tomes about that.
Yeah.
Emanuel Swedenborg thought he was communicating with people from Jupiter and so forth. So the same things are happening over and over again, and we really have to question. I mean, they do seem to be from an external source somehow, and possibly extraterrestrial, possibly something much more earthbound. But I always find these things fascinating. I remember back in about 76, I think, they came out with the Sandy Larson case. And that was a lady that had a bizarre abduction experience in North Dakota. And that was one of the first ones that I had encountered with heavy paranormal overtones, because prior to that, we didn't have a lot of abductions, that we'd see the humanoids in conjunction with the craft. But we were more used to Betty and Barney Hill, something that seemed to be a little more physical, although...
Right, nuts and bolts.
Yes, but that used to be my go-to, like, okay, this is getting crazy and the paranormal all over the place and nothing works. But I could always go back to good old Betty and Barney Hill, who had a nice, medical diagnosis with no deductible and no copay aboard that ship, right? But
completely free health care.
Yeah, it's Medicare from space. Call Bernie Sanders.
I love it.
The thing is, if you look to see what happened to them afterward, it's even more bizarre. I mean, it's just they had an outbreak of poltergeist phenomena in the house. They had Betty's earrings were gone when she was abducted. One day she comes home, and on the kitchen table is a bunch of dirt and leaves and her earrings sitting on top of it. Uh,
Oh, Bigfoot dropped it off.
there's just one thing after another. Uh, Barney's son, Barney Jr., her stepson, was stationed in Panama. He's standing watch one night in the military, and a gentleman comes by all dressed in white, and he calls himself Mr. Geist, ghost in German.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I've stood night watches in the military. Nobody's around, and so the only thing he's interested in is the strange things that happened to his father and his stepmother. And so he comes back in different successive nights. The brass finds out, and they think, what the heck is this? So they get poor Barney Jr. They're asking him all kinds of questions about this weirdo, all dressed in white, asking him all these strange questions. And it gets stranger. I mean, other family members experienced strange phenomena. So that kind of shattered my nice little ET paradigm that I could always go back to with Betty and Barney Hill.
Yeah, and it seems like, a lot of these things are connected with, perhaps other dimensions, or maybe the astral plane, the fabled astral plane, that we have this physical body, and then we also have a spirit body that we can travel in, and perhaps there's beings who know how to control that environment more than we're able to, and can affect us very deeply without us ever leaving the supposed safety of our bedrooms.
And it's been going on for generations in different guises. Sometimes we think they're gods or spiritual beings or ET or whatever. What did you guys talk about with the pancakes? Is that the Joe Symington?
No.
So,
It was actually
it was Oumuamua.
Yeah, Oumuamua, and
Oh, okay.
how some scientists believe it was more of a pancake shape than the artist depiction, which typically shows a cigar shaped whatever it was. So
A big silver bullet flying through the
Yeah.
sky.
It's the newest
But,
flavor at IHOP, the space pancake.
yeah, but this leads us to another connection, Steve. So your story today, Wendy, talks about
Yes.
maybe other relationships that we're having with these maybe non-physical beings, maybe spirits. What's going on? What story were you researching, Wendy?
I actually was wanting to talk a little bit about an artist who recently passed away, Susan Hiller. And she just passed away on Monday. She was 78 years old, and just a fascinating person in that she started out wanting to go into the art field, but she instead ended up going into anthropology and did a bunch of studying of that, and then took that and started applying it to various works of art. But she got grouped into the British conceptualists style of art from the 60s and 70s. However, she would say that she was a paraconceptualist because she was fascinated with the supernatural.
I like her already.
Yeah.
What's she doing tonight? Oh, she's dead.
So one of her quotes from an article in The Guardian just a few years back was, she said, "I'm interested in occult powers, and if people find this ludicrous, that is their problem. I'm not a true believer, but these things are there, and to say they aren't is ridiculous." So she wasn't afraid to just go out there and use that as inspiration for her artwork. And just to give you some examples of her works that were paranormally inspired, one of the first earlier ones was a work called The Sisters of Menon. Back in 1972, actually, it was a 7-year project where she would use the process of automatic writing. And we've touched on this a little bit before in the past. This is where somebody just freely writes like a monologue that's coming to them in their head, and usually it's kind of in the format of someone else speaking, and where those voices come from is anybody's guess.
Right. So that's how it's related to all these stories that there's these other beings that are reaching us. In this case, through the process of just writing, but, who knows if that's coming from you? It's coming from some kind of channeled source, maybe some spirit beating.
Yeah. And Allison, there was another work that she did that I thought of you instantly.
Yeah?
It was called Dream Mapping. And that was where she wrote about the dreams that she and her friends had while sleeping inside the middle of fairy rings in Wiltshire, UK. And
wow.
these fairy rings were rings of mushrooms claimed in folklore to be portals to a spirit world. And so she did this project, and she described it as intensely serious and very funny.
And I got inspiration for my next camping trip. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
there
I
you
mean,
go.
Allison, this hits you on so many different levels. The mushrooms, you're a big fan of mushrooms. The fairies, you're a big fan of fairies. So, but also the fact that a serious artist was using this as inspiration and was channeling that kind of energy is really cool, I think.
So you can go camping in a fairy circle and take some mushrooms, Allison, and see what happens.
Oh my gosh,
Like-
it's like double the mushrooms.
Nice.
That's the kind of live podcast I'd like to see.
So
Just
meta.
Allison freaking out. The fairies are here. They're talking to me. They're talking through me, man.
So long as Mike doesn't stick in a toadstool in the middle of one of them.
Oh, that's
I
right.
understand. I was just kidding, Allison.
So
Hey.
then I'll just, describe a few more of her works because you might want to look her up if you weren't familiar, as I wasn't actually until I started delving into this. But she did a video project called Psy Girls, and that's spelled PSI, where she used video clips from movies of women using telekinetic powers. And then she kind of coordinated that with some audio that she created and had these clips playing on a loop. So that brings in the whole telekinesis aspect. And she also had an art installation that was an audio installation where she had a room full of these little tiny speakers, and each one had a different recording from an alien abductee telling about their experience. So you'd walk through the room and you could hear these different voices of the people who had been abducted by aliens. And she was also fascinated by UFOs and abductions and that kind of thing. There's a ton of other works that she's done, but one of the newer ones from 2018 that I thought I would conclude with was called, and this will give you a nice little clue, that the title of it, Illuminazioni, is a 30-minute high-resolution video work bringing together scientific data with subjective experiences, and the main focus is on witness reports of mysterious encounters people have had with unexplained phenomena of light. And situated against a background of cosmic light waves translated into audio by scientists, with visuals derived primarily from static on analog television, containing tiny traces of the Big Bang. So, as you can see, she wove the science and the mystery and the unexplained, and I think she was a fascinating person and an artist to check out, and I'm sorry that we lost her this week.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you're teaching us about her, because I'm just looking at an article again from The Guardian, and she worked with the experiments of Konstantin Radeva.
That's right.
So she was also into instrumental transcommunication, another larger concept of which EVP, electronic voice phenomena, is a subset. So,
Yeah.
wow, I wish I would have known this person.
Well, that's what I was thinking when you mentioned the static.
Yeah.
A little bit of static on the TV. Because, when you think about the Spirit Box, which I have not yet had a great experience with, but we're going to watch Hellier in a couple of weeks, and then we'll try our own ST's method.
Cool.
And see if
Right.
we can make that happen on seeing the other side.
And that also connects to what Steve was saying before about the Hopkinsville goblins, because that's one of the subjects of Hellier by our friends Greg and Dana Newkirk.
So one more thing about Susan Hiller, the cool thing about the Sisters of Menon was that she was doing a collaborative telepathy experiment with her friends. It was called Draw Together. So while they were working on the art project, they were trying to send each other messages from all over the world. And she said that when she tried to do it, she was surprised to find that she started just writing.
Oh man, cool.
She felt like she felt like she was receiving something, and she felt she was getting this powerful collective female solidarity of sisters from Thebes, so from ancient Greece. And the women's movement of the 70s that Hiller was a part carried an interest in ancient Greek oracular women. So like the oracle at Delphi. So
Right.
women with prophetic powers. And, with the sacred prostitutes, they were involved in that too, right?
I'm not sure about that, about their power
if we-
to prognosticate.
So can we do a segment on these sometime? Not for
That's
not
a
for me,
whole
but
episode of its
I
own.
have a couple friends that would be fascinated
Yeah,
by it. but-
I was going to say, now you got me back into religion. But so the thing is, when her partner David Coxhead tried to participate, first of
Right.
all, that is a very
no.
male name.
That's unfortunate.
The media mystic telepresence inscribed "no men."
At least,
So,
I'm
like-
sorry, at least his name's not Dick. Dick Coxhead. That would be even worse.
Right. That no, just
Excuse me, Mike. I might have a bad connection here. I'm hearing something. I
Uh-oh.
don't know what that was.
oh yeah, right.
I apologize.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yes.
It's from Allison. It was from Allison.
So the thing is, somebody pointed out that no men, like that she got, so her boyfriend or her husband or partner, whatever, tries to participate with them, and he tries to send messages, and the first message she gets is no men. It's like it's the she woman man haters club or
That's
whatever
right.
that she
Get out of
called it.
here, Dick
gosh.
Coxhead. We don't want you know your kind around here.
Lippard points out that this is somebody who's done research and written papers about her work. That no men is an anagram of menon.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, so no men, hashtag no men, when you're going to participate in the draw together experiment. But the thing is like it was originally a telepathy art experiment, and then she started to feel that she was getting messages and then started doing this automatic writing, very feminine centered. And, that's the 1970s. And so obviously Susan Hiller was woman, and she roared.
Yes.
And she roared with a paranormal voice. And, that's absolutely fantastic and fascinating. And, I wish I would have known about her art sooner.
Yeah.
Instead of wasting time on Picasso. Because, like triangles are cool or whatever. I get it. But she was doing automatic writing.
Yeah, and I really like her not just using the supernatural or paranormal as inspiration for art, but also, she has that scientific bent as well from her anthropology study. So it's just very cool to see that. And I'm looking forward to checking out more of her works now.
Yes. And the thing is, she was inspired to study anthropology by Margaret Mead. And Margaret Mead was very instrumental in bringing parapsychology into the mainstream of the scientific community, where it's being pushed out now by Richard Dawkins and his ilk.
That's right. His ilk.
His ilk.
I love how you just turned into Stewie all of a sudden. Disdain.
you gotta-
That Stewie, you put a little Stewie disdain spin on it. And his ilk.
Right. Well, actually, the truth is, I think Richard Dawkins is a brilliant writer. I think he's got a lot of great things to say. I just don't agree with him.
That's fair.
I think it's cool that he married one of the Doctor Who's companions. And so, like,
I did not know that, really?
Yeah, Leela too. The second, not Leela too, Romana too. There was the dark-haired Romana, and then the second Romana with the blonde hair. He married her.
All right. Good to know.
So he's
So not the wild
So he-
woman. That was Leah, right?
No, that was Leela. Yeah,
Leela, yeah.
I
I like her.
Leela of the 7 team. Anyway,
That's right. She would be on board with the whole no men thing. Hashtag
of course,
no men.
she'd kill the men who tried to join. That was Leela's thing. All right. The most interesting thing I think I saw this week, this just happened yesterday. So we're talking to you. Actually, I'm sorry, this happened on Monday. Long known as the Nevada Test Site and now called the Nevada National Security Site, the sprawling landmass deep in the southern Nevada desert is home to some of America's most sensitive installations and pockmarked with craters from past nuclear explosions. It's here that a peculiar and deadly incident occurred on January 28th, 2019. I like how newspaper articles aren't even written like newspaper articles anymore.
I was just going to say that sounded like a movie trailer
Right.
voice should be reading it.
They're written like blog, it's in a world
Right.
with a nuclear test site. Okay, what we're talking about is the Nevada Test Site, and that is where 992 nuclear explosions took place from like 1941 to 1990.
1990? Really? That late?
Oh yeah,
wow.
I think maybe in 1992. But the thing is that when we could no longer bomb the crap out of like these islands in the Pacific, and we had to keep things more secretive and everything like that, then we brought it home to Nevada, and they picked a desert where the weather was, mostly easily predictable, and they decided to start blowing nukes up to end the war and the Second World War. And Monday night, a guy drives right through their security and the gate and everything. And he starts driving through the Nevada Test Site. And the thing is, Nevada Test Site is not as fiercely guarded as Area 51, but It also has got plenty of, U.S. secrets there.
Sure.
And it's also a kind of a dangerous place because of all the fallout. We'll talk about that in a second. And, I almost think that this place may be house more secrets than Area 51 because this idea that everybody knows about Area 51, nobody thinks about the old nuclear site as a place to keep things. Everybody's always got their eyes on it. That you can go to Google Maps and you can see that there's a satellite looking at Area 51 all the time.
Yeah.
But who's thinking about this place that most people consider, well, kind of abandoned, it still has a 1 mile long airstrip that not a lot of people talk about, that they still guard kind of secretly. And this guy blows through. And so there's a private contractors that guard this particular place. So they're like black ops kind of people. They're like Blackwater. It's not even like regular U.S. soldiers. It's like mercenaries that guard this place too. So you can just imagine everybody's probably smoking, goatees. I can see a lot of headbands. Like whenever you think of mercenaries, you think headbands, not just.
You think of Dog the Bounty Hunter, don't
do.
you?
The thing is, Dog the Bounty Hunter is guarding the Nevada test site.
Boy, this whole TV show thing or movie thing is coming together here with all the visuals.
It is totally.
It's great.
Now, Steve, when you were, you said did some guard duty in the military. Did you ever have anybody blow through on you? Come flying by?
Blow through? Oh, no. I actually guarded a nuclear submarine for a while. I did topside watch in port, So, and we had our sidearm, just in case any commie saboteurs tried to get on board. But I didn't have anybody storm the boat.
Good.
Okay,
good.
that's good. My father-in-law spent several years on a nuclear submarine. He's got some pretty interesting stories. Nothing paranormal yet, or at least not that I found out. But I'm hoping one day to secretly get him drunk at Christmas and have him bust out and be like, "You should have. I've seen some shit, man, at the bottom of the ocean." So the chase goes on for 8 miles inside the Nevada test site. The car pulls over. The man gets out of the car with some type of metallic cylindrical object, and he confronts his pursuers. But he's not dropping it. He's not responding to verbal commands, and they popped him. They just shot him, right there.
Oh man!
And that's it. Okay, here's the incident that came. The National Nuclear Security Administration, we still have one of those. Thank God they got all the appointments made it. They run the site, and here's their statement. North Las Vegas, at 5:18 p.m. Pacific time, an unidentified male failed to stop at the Nevada National Security Site Security Gate in Mercury, Nevada. Both Security Protective Forces officers, SPOs, mercenaries, life is cheap, and Nye County Sheriff's Office, Kingdom Nye, where Art Bell used to live, that's right, took up pursuit. After driving approximately 8 miles past the security gate, the individual came to a stop, exited his car, and approached both they say SPOs, I say mercenaries, and the Nye County Sheriff's Office with a cylindrical object in hand. The subject refused to adhere to verbal commands. When the subject approached officers, he was fired upon. The suspect died at the scene. And mysteriously, everything's gone. No, they didn't say that.
So what about the cylinder?
What is it?
What's in the cylinder is the next question.
Well, when you described it, the first thing I thought of was that shaker, that hand percussion that I have, that I use it.
Right. So,
You mean the exercise device?
No, right. The shake. The shake weight.
What is it called?
The shake weight.
The shake weight. He branded
the
the shake weight.
Right.
And maybe he was just trying to help them to pump more iron, because
You can be arrested for
I was
that
gonna say
for shake weighting.
put down the shake weight.
in some counties.
Put down the not in Nye County, because it's in Nye County, one of the counties where prostitution is legal.
Again, I didn't know there'd be a quiz.
Oh, I know what you thought.
my
I was
gosh.
talking about.
Hey. Okay. No, I think it is because Pahrump, Nevada, where Art Bell used to live, that's where the Moonlight Bunny, the bunny ranch and stuff.
Oh, okay. So back to the shake weight.
Right.
Was
Okay. So he
was he
takes out-
actually demonstrating to show them, like how they could effortlessly pump iron so they get even huger biceps?
No, what happened was he was using the shaker as percussion, and they shot him because it's like nobody really needs to pay the percussionist.
I thought he was off the beat.
Hey, they're like
Cheap
really?
shot.
We already have a drummer.
Oh,
Yeah, like the bongo player too. They just They just shoot him. No, but it's just a very interesting thing that this happened just Monday night. What happened? Why did the guy, blow through the security gate? Why did he stop and confront them after 8 miles? What was he holding? And was it that dangerous that they needed to kill him?
Did he say anything?
Well, they're not going to say like, I know the truth. Yeah, he came out and he explained that he knew our secret plan, so we had to kill him.
But nothing is said about the recovered cylinder because they must have recovered it.
Well, I'm sure, but
Yeah,
they'll probably have a press conference about it. Maybe because enough people will check.
I'm hoping
and
George
see.
Knapp is all over this.
Yeah, this does seem to be because it's 65 miles northwest of Las Vegas. And the thing about the Nevada test site that I thought was really interesting was that, number one, we found out how much nuclear fallout can hurt people. Persistent and substantial. There's a paper that came out in 2017 measuring the effect of atmospheric nuclear testing on American mortality patterns. And this particular paper estimates up to 300 to 400,000 people in the United States died from cancer, radiation poisoning, things like that, from the fallout of the hundreds of tests at the Nevada test site. And, most famously is, and I remember hearing about this story like maybe 20, 25 years ago and seeing people talk about it. There's this movie that John Wayne was in called The Conqueror.
Oh, that's right.
And this is where, number one, this is where John Wayne plays Genghis Khan. So you talk about whitewashing a role. It's a must. I mean, the thing, right? They put him on makeup. They gave him the mustache and stuff like that. Like they made John Wayne look like a Mongol.
He just shouldn't have. If he had not worn the chaps, it could have carried it off.
He was almost there. He was almost there. But the thing is that they filmed it in St. George, Utah, which was like right downwind of the Nevada test site. And so of the 220 people and the crew that worked in St. George, Utah on that particular film, like 90 died early of cancer.
Yeah. John Wayne being one of them.
Well, now John Wayne, I mean, he did smoke 4 packs a day.
Wow.
So it's not like he wasn't pushing it. But also John Wayne had stomach cancer. Like he didn't die of lung cancer.
Yeah.
And people have been talking about it for at least since 1980. People magazine article in 1980 reported that of 220 cast and crew, 91 had contracted cancer, with 46 of them dying. Also, it says this this quote from a scientist at the Pentagon's Defense Nuclear Agency says, "Please God, don't let us have killed John Wayne."
Really?
Yeah. He's like, oh man, we killed John Wayne.
Gosh.
But here's something else I didn't realize. Okay, so we talk about that, like that may be, that may be a coincidence. It was the 50s, everybody's smoking. We didn't know that much maybe about carcinogenic substances.
Or really anything.
But the thing is, the government has paid out $2 billion in settlements to people who lived near the Nevada test site in compensation for health problems that have occurred over the national average with cancer and different kinds of health
at least
problems.
they tried to make good on it.
Yeah, but $2 billion. And you can still take the Nevada test site. You can actually, there's certain areas you can take a tour of it. And they have like a bus once a month where tourists can see the majority of the nuclear tests, happen in the United States. And you can see some of the craters. You can see the ghost towns. You remember the beginning of Indiana Jones and the interdimensional aliens, whatever that one was, the last one?
Oh, yeah. The Last Crusade. No, that's not the Last Crusade.
The Crystal Skull?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Thank you.
So in the beginning of the movie, he's inside of that town, like he's inside of a ghost town. He sees all those fake people, and then he jumps into a refrigerator.
Yes.
And the best thing is like all those people spent all that money on atomic bunkers, and who knew you could just put your family in the fridge?
Oh, thank goodness. Now we know
Okay.
the secret.
Well, I want to know if the light went off.
Yeah, right?
Nice.
Finally have
Does
the
it actually
answer
go
to
on?
that eternal
Yes, that's
question.
important.
It is important.
It's a good thing you've got me here to cover these details. Otherwise, you would have missed that.
Right.
And now I'll just continue wondering.
In the 1950s, people used to go to Las Vegas, and that was a touristy thing to do, was watch the mushroom clouds go off.
Jeez.
Okay.
Boy.
That just blows my mind. That idea, it's like, let's go see the nukes. I mean, it might be pretty cool. I mean, obviously, there's going to be something visually
I'm
spectacular
sure it
about it.
would. Yeah.
Do you mind if I add a little bit to this?
No, please do,
Okay.
Steve.
But late 60s, there was a man named Ernest J. Steinglass from Pittsburgh, the University of Pittsburgh. And he was talking about the first bomb that was dropped and how they traced the cloud that went over the Deep South. And they found out that the infant deaths increased in that area and then decreased in the same way we know radioactive fallout to decrease. And his contention was that radioactive fallout, the strontium-90 crippled, as he put it, the reproductive machinery in humans. So just that one test, he believed it was connected to those infant deaths. That was a long time ago. I remember hearing that, the same time watching the takeoff for the moon, the 1969, the Apollo 11. And this guy came up on the news that time. I never forgot that. But anyway, go ahead.
No, I mean, that's the kind of thing. It's like this idea of, I always hate to think about government conspiracies. And I always think like, okay, there can't be a real government conspiracy. They always have our best interests in mind. But do they really?
Or maybe they just get backed into a corner sometimes.
Sure. But the people that made the decision to do 992 nuclear tests in Nevada that might have killed 500,000 Americans, I don't want them to make any more decisions.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say.
That's fair.
Yeah, when you want to say vote the bums out, there's your one.
And it's interesting, what Steve was saying, that there were early whistleblowers. And I think when you go back in history, you find that there are these people who were prescient, who had it in their mind, this is not a good thing. And no one was listening to them. They were like Cassandras, modern day Cassandras. And hey, it just went on.
Right. So anyway, let's make sure we keep an eye on everything. But with watchdogs like the crew of See You on the Other Side, I think America's in good hands, everybody.
We'll protect you, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships
That's
at
right.
sea.
Okay, now thank you very much for joining us today. Mr. Steve Ward, all the way from Michigan by Battle Creek, hanging out. He's got Tony the Tiger there with him, along with Snap Crackle, and there's a leprechaun waiting to have a nightcap with him when he gets back. We were talking about the Fae, and they have them. They have them all in Battle Creek.
Just tell me where that guy is, and I'm going to go into another room because I think those guys just creep me out, man. If they show up and you don't invite them, and they're there, and it's like, hey,
what's going on?
Send him my way.
Enough of you. So, Steve, if they want to learn more about you, is there a good place? You have a blog or a website or a place where they can find more about your kind of weirdness?
Not so far. Just ask Allison; she knows. But I'm on Facebook.
I know where to find him.
I will be doing in the near future. Like I'm slouching toward my own radio show on Paranormal UK Radio. It'll be called the High Strangeness Factor, and be 1 hour every fortnight, the way it goes right now. And for you people in Middle America and on the East and West Coast, that's every 2 weeks. Okay. I love saying fortnight. And I'm on Mac Maloney's Military X-Files every week as a correspondent. They're I can't remember which broadcasting place it is, but you can download it. It's all over the place. So I'm here and there, and listen, it was great to be here tonight. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks for joining us.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Steve. You're always such a wealth of information.
And Allison, if people want to read some of yours strange cryptic writings, where can they find that?
Oh, well, you can find more information about me at MilwaukeeGhost.com. I also have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Mothman. And as always, I've got some amazing stuff on HawaiiParacon.com.
All right. And of course, there's going to be a brand new song inspired by the conversation, and you'll be able to find that one downloadable in the show notes at othersidepodcast.com/233. But if you'd like to learn more about Wendy and my strange music, where can we find that, Wen?
You can find that at sunspotuniverse.com.
Fantastic. And just would like to thank all of our Patreon community for making it so that we can continue doing the podcasts, making little videos, and making the songs every week.
Thank you.
We love you guys, and we're looking forward to the Hangout. Now, if you'd like to join our February Hangout, where can people get on the Patreon, Wen?
They can find out all the information about that at othersidepodcast.com/donate.
we would be remiss if we did not do a shout out to our man, Dr. Ned. Doc Ned's at the level where he gets a shout out in every single episode. So, Ned, for your friendship and your support,
Thank you, Ned.
we kiss you.
Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at othersidepodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side. The fairies are here. They're talking to me. They're talking through me, man.